do we need this tomorrow? When really do we want all of this implemented in order to benefit Canadians and to your opening point to boost productivity?
Ideally, it would have been implemented a few years ago. I mean, when it comes to instant payments, the project has been delayed several times over the past decade. The RTR was first announced in 2016. The original launch date was 2020 to 2021. It's been delayed several times since then, first to 2023, now to 2026. And 2026 isn't even a launch date. It's just the year in which the industry will test its ability to use the RTR. So we still don't have a launch date in sight. For Canadians to benefit, we need this yesterday.
Thank you, MP Williams. And now we'll go to MP Sorbara, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to be here today. I apologize for not being in person. I hope you can hear me clear here virtually. I will say that this morning I had the pleasure of announcing an investment in my riding and Vaughan Woodbridge and the City of Vaughan off of the Housing Accelerator Fund to build a bridge over the 400 linking two subdivisions in the City of Vaughan. So it's great to see the Housing Accelerator Fund and the investments that are flowing from that. And the City of Vaughan received $59 million. And a part of that $59 million, about $7.5 million, will go a third with the city and the region to build this bridge and to alleviate traffic flow and to allow for the construction, accelerate the construction of new homes. So it's great to see those investments happening because we know that the official opposition party does not like the Housing Accelerator Fund and does not like investing in Canada and Canadians. So we'll continue along that path. Getting to the matters at hand, because these are very important matters. First, if I can go to the Physiotherapy Association, and I very much enjoyed the remarks that were stated about the importance of prenatal care and et cetera. As a father of three daughters, obviously, my wife and I use midwives in the births of our three daughters, and we know the services are so important. I do want to ask about the expansion of the student loan forgiveness program and how important that is to the Physiotherapy Association of Canada.
Thank you for your question. We are delighted about the expansion of the Canada Student Loan Forgiveness Program to physiotherapy professionals. At this time, there's a need for more physios in Canada. Currently, there's only 3% of physios practicing in rural areas in Canada. This will ensure that Canadians have access to physiotherapy care and, to your point, prenatal care. It ensures that older persons have access to rehabilitative care. It ensures that many Canadians who didn't have access to physiotherapy care can access it. This is revolutionizing to small communities. It also means that students who may not have had access to education can now access education to become a physiotherapy professional and serve their community. It means that those who had to travel far distances to access care can now access it from a local provider. This will mean enhanced care for Canadians. It will mean better care for future generations and current generations. And this is a very proud moment for the profession and, most importantly, all Canadians seeking access to physiotherapy care.
I thank you very much for that wholesome answer. And to be frank, if you're delighted, I'm delighted. So that is great to hear the feedback of this policy measure that we put in place through this piece of legislation. And that is now and will assist once everything passes physiotherapists. The role of physiotherapists, much like an occupational therapist or speech and language pathologist, all the therapists that are involved in whichever setting they may be involved in, is so important for our healthcare continuum, and their role is so essential. So I want to say thank you, and to you and your members, for what you do in helping Canadians day in, day out. So thank you very much. Switching gears a little bit over to the individual from Fintechs Canada, if I think I have the name correct. If I don't, I apologize. From Fintechs. Sir, as someone who has been a long time participant in the financial services in various roles, be it on Wall Street for a number of years, be it on Bay Street, and someone who looks at open banking as a vast opportunity. If I can look at it from the consumer angle, and I think you may have touched upon this in your remarks, about ensuring the safety and security of the data for consumers. How can we make sure and ensure that for consumers, they feel secure with, call it open banking, consumer-driven banking, that as we make these steps and, incrementally going forward, we need to make sure that it's secure. How can, from your vantage point, we can best do that?
I think the best way to do that is to begin implementation of the work that the government has been doing up until now. The government's been consulting at length with the industry about all the ways to manage all the risks, how to make sure that cybersecurity risks are managed, how to make sure that data is appropriately safeguarded, how to make sure that firms are required to be very transparent with their customers about what data they're accessing, for what reason and why, how to make it very easy for a consumer to revoke their consent if they don't want to share their data anymore, how to allocate liability in the event something goes wrong so that consumers aren't waiting days and days and days, weeks and weeks to be made whole. All these questions have been asked and answered. They've been sent up to the minister in a giant a book, an open banking encyclopedia, it's been referred to colloquially. The way we do it is to implement all those measures, and we hope to see that in fall legislation.
Okay. Thank you for that. And within the ecosystem that exists, and we know here in Canada, especially, if I can be narcissistic for 1 second, in the province of Ontario, we do have an ecosystem in my home province of whether it's in Waterloo and in Toronto, and that ecosystem is continuing to build out. Is that not a fact? Like we continue to attract top talent within the fintech sector here in the province of Ontario and of course in Canada?
I think we certainly do. If that wasn't true, I don't think we would have seen the Ontario government come out very publicly in support of open banking and instant money movement.
Correct. And I know that they've also come out for financial literacy.
Yeah. So MP Sarbar, we've just gone over the time, but thank you very much. Great questions. And we've got now MP Samari, please, for the next 6 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings to all of the witnesses. I have questions for Mr. Vronsis from FinTech Canada, but probably my first question, however, will go to the Refugee Council. We understand that in C69, there are changes in 4 aspects without any consultation and it will impact the international reputation of Canada. And why did the government act in this way?
Jenny, we can see how each want to answer it. Merci beaucoup pour la.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, it's really concerning. Why these changes to the Budget Implementation Act without in-depth consultation, because at our organization we have knowledge and expertise and a lot of thoughts on the matter, and it's just a surprise that it was added. There was significant investment in the budget. We supported that, but the changes in the act, what we've understood is that there are plans for regulations that are not even in the public sphere yet, and they need to make quick changes in their legislation to ensure that the regulations can pass. And that's not how these things should be done. And without seeing the regulations, it's very difficult to know what the impacts of the legislation changes will be. But what we see from our perspective is that these changes are being made too quickly. We think even that there are errors and they have not properly understood the implications of the legislative changes. There are formulations that are very rigid.
So we're seeing many of the amendments which are causing automatic guaranteed outcomes that would happen to refugee claimants, which absolutely not only jeopardize their rights and their justice, but will lead to massive backlogs counterintuitively to the process. So we're really recommending that we just put a pause on the refugee immigration law reforms cut them from the bill and find ways to review them separately or simply to delete the measures. Jenny, veux-tu ajouter quelque chose?
Oui, si je peux ajouter, ce n'est pas la
Jenny, would you like to add something? Yes, it's not the first time it's happened. In 2019, for example, measures were added to the budget bill, which was for people requesting asylum at the border, and so that meant people who asked for asylum in the United States were banned from the Canadian system. This is a measure that we were very opposed to, but particularly because it was presented in the context of a budget. It was clear that it was to make the change faster, but that's not the way that it should be done. Thank you for the question. Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, there are a lot of sectors in this current bill where we're wondering. There are a lot of stakeholders who have come to say the same thing as you. Why is this in a Budget Implementation Act? And it was done without consultation and very quickly. It's very concerning. Ms. Jeans, I can't believe that they want to put refugees and asylum seekers in federal penitentiaries. Why is the government presenting this, and what can be done? Thank you. Thank you for the question. So the Immigration Act allows for administrative detention of foreign nationals and sometimes permanent residents, and there are 3 centres managed by the Canada Border Services Agency across Canada. But for a long time now, provincial prisons were also used for some individuals. Some individuals considered high risk, but some where that was not the case. And you perhaps know that while all of the provinces have already stated that they would be putting an end to this practice to allow this detention in their provincial institutions, and it is still continuing in some provinces, but it will soon end following these statements. So in reaction, the federal government wants to allow for detention in federal institutions, and they are saying the suggestion is for some high-risk individuals, but not necessarily just high risk. But for us, these are, because they are administrative detentions related not to justice, but to immigration, CBSA should be able to manage the detention itself with appropriate surveillance and control. Thank you. There's a lot of information here. So in your opinion, CBSA should be responsible for this aspect and not federal prisons. Yes, either through investments in a broader solutions-based program, either in training of a support program for mental health, for addictions. There are all sorts of measures that would be less expensive and more appropriate that could be established. Thank you. So a lot of questions about that aspect of the bill. In conclusion, you are suggesting to withdraw this entire section from the Budget Implementation Act, to study it in a separate bill and in consultation with organizations like yours and specialists in the matter, and then to come back with something better drafted. Yes, that's quite right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
We'll go to MP Davies for the next 6 minutes.
Thank you. To the Canadian Council for Refugees, can you confirm approximately how many people are detained in Canada under immigration law each year?
So the statistics are actually available on CBSA's website. Before COVID, it was in the range of about 8,000 people. It was much lower during COVID, and then we've seen a gradual ramping up. I don't have the latest numbers in front of you. We can send them to you, but as I say, it's on CBSA's website. At any given moment, there are usually about a couple of hundred people detained, but there's quite a turnover in the numbers, with some short-term and some very long-term detentions.
And if you can give us a flavor of sort of what that population looks like, about what portion of those individuals are detained because CBSA suspects they may not appear for an immigration proceeding, or because the CBSA was not satisfied with their identity documents versus those detained because they may pose a risk to public safety?
Again, there's quite detailed statistics on the CBSA website. So I'm just looking actually.
I can help, Jenny.
Thank you, Gary. Go ahead.
So thank you very much for the question. Over 90% of those currently in immigration detention, including those who have been held in provincial jails, are held on those reasons, for concerns that they may maybe missing an identity document, or there's a question about whether they will turn up for a hearing. It is less than 5% that are identified as being potentially a kind of a high security risk. And so the vast majority of those detained, including those in provincial jails, are held for those questions, identity and how to find them for a document, which is why incarceration in a place where criminals are held is a completely inappropriate institution.
Right, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. Just to get a flavor, though, of the demographics, can you give us an idea of what proportion of those detained in Canada under immigration law are children, mothers with infants, or people with disabilities?
So there are very few children who've been officially detained over the past few years. We don't actually have reporting on people with disabilities or, for example, pregnant women.
Okay. Now, is there any time limit currently on immigration detention that's laid out in Canadian law?
No, Canadian law has no limit. So there is a review by the Immigration and Refugee Board on a statutory time frame after 48 hours of detention, again, 7 days later. And after that, every 30 days until the person is released or removed from Canada. The Canadian law has no time frame, no limit whatsoever.
Now, Immigration Minister Miller has insisted that federal prisons will only be used for a, quote, very small segment of the migrant population, which he has described as, quote, not criminals, but, quote, high-risk individuals who often have severe mental health problems. In your view, do correctional facilities have the appropriate expertise and capacity in place to act as mental health care facilities for those who are detained under immigration law?
So there's nothing stopping somebody who's detained for immigration reasons, if they're in mental health crisis, from being taken to a mental health specialized hospital, for example. They remain detained while they receive the care and treatment that they need for a mental health crisis. This happens all the time. And then once they've stabilized, if they're still legally detained, they could be brought back to a detention facility. The same thing if somebody were to be violent, destroy property, or commit any other criminal act, they could be criminally charged and dealt with in the criminal justice system. So our position is that people who are in immigration detention should be in immigration detention facilities, if at all. We recommend the use of alternatives, mental health and other treatments where needed. But you'll see in the budget that the amounts necessary to convert federal facilities to immigration stations are astronomical, and we believe that the same funds could be used to expand alternatives, to do mental health training, security training if needed. Any kind of training would be more appropriate, more humane, and far less costly than conversion of federal facilities, where we really fear there will be de facto solitary confinement. Somebody may be not officially solitary confined, but de facto, because they're separated from anybody else, they are held alone. This already happens in immigration holding centers and is more likely to happen for this small number of people who would be in federal facilities.
Yeah. I put the example of the death of Abdurrahman Ibrahim Hassan, who's a refugee with a lengthy history of mental illness, who did die in a segregated cell in a Canadian immigration detention center in 2015. And I noted that the jury's first recommendation was to stop the use of jails in detaining migrants. In your view, why is the federal government ignoring that recommendation?
I believe that the timing is creating, and this is why it's in a budget bill, a sense of urgency, because for example, in Ontario and Quebec, where we would see the most number of people detained in provincial jails is in Ontario, and that will no longer be possible after June of this year. So I think that that urgency is maybe causing the Minister of Public Safety to want to allow this measure. But again, we would say that these risks, if they exist, can be managed with current facilities and training and investment in other supports. And where that falls short, mental health system and the criminal justice system provide tools to manage other kinds of risk.
If thank I can you, just, and thank you, MP Davies. We got to move into our second round. Sorry, we're well over time. But in this round, each party will have, and maybe you'll have an opportunity then. We'll have up to about 2 minutes is what I'm looking at the time to ask a question or two. So we're starting with MP Lawrence for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and it's unfortunate that I only have 2 minutes. I think you've all had a ton of value to bring there. I will focus my time with FinTechs Canada. Like I said, great job with your testimony and valuable input from all. So I just want to build on what my colleague said. So we're seeing a world where increasingly countries around the world are adopting open banking. I think it might even be, I'm not too far on this, the real-time rail. A majority of advanced economies have adopted a real-time rail. Canada continues to lag behind. I know in this last course in the BIA we've got a framework, but we don't have a start date for either open banking or real-time rail at this point. Is that correct? And maybe you can expand upon that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. We don't have a launch date. One wasn't committed to. It's hard to figure out exactly why. But if you work backwards from the bill passing and then build in some time for the drafting and passing of regulations, and you make rosy assumptions about how quickly the FCAC will be able to stand up its oversight capability, we're assuming that open banking will go live no earlier than 2026. So we are still years away.
In the spring or early summer of 2024, and based on just doing the math, as it were, in your analysis, the earliest we would be starting open banking would be 2026. There, is that correct?
I think rosy but realistic assumptions, but 100% on the rosier side.
And what about for real-time rail? When do we have a launch date for that, or?
So the Bank of Canada recently said at a big payments conference that it's disappointed with all of these delays, and I don't know why exactly they said this, but they added that don't worry, this is going to happen. If I had to speculate why they said that, I would speculate that they're responding to what a lot of the backroom chatter is turning up, which is that this system might not even launch. It's been almost 10 years and we still don't have a launch date. Is this thing going to die?
Now to MP Thompson for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, and Ms. Scott, I'd like to speak with you on a couple of the comments earlier, and I agree. I think the expanded student loan forgiveness for physiotherapists is really important. But I want to focus on primary health care, and I hear it's committee and multiple committees, and often in debate in the House of Commons. Primary health care is seen as physician-led versus health professionals around the multidisciplinary team. Right person at the right time, understanding the skills across the health sector. Could you speak, because I know that I just have a small amount of time, if you could speak to the work that your organization is doing to try to move away from that, and I'm going to call it a myth, that it's physician-led. I mean, obviously it's a very important part of the broader team, but it really is around multidisciplinary care and how the expanded student loan forgiveness will assist in help physiotherapists move to more rural areas. So we do have truly comprehensive health care in all regions of the country.
Thank you for that question. In preparing for Canada Student Loan Forgiveness Program, we heard from our partners like the Canadian Nurses Association and the Canadian Orthopedic Association, who supported that team-based care approach in terms of ensuring that the right provider can provide care at the right time. And we're very proud of the work of the team-based primary care initiative that has funded physiotherapy funding for team-based primary care research. In terms of the benefits of primary care, it's ensuring that Canadians, should they experience an MSK issue, can see a physiotherapist rather than another provider. So this is extremely beneficial to Canadians, ensuring that teams have the right provider on them. And the Canadian Nurses Association supported the student loan forgiveness ask because of the multidimensional skill expertise that physiotherapists provide. The Canadian Orthopedic Association also supported that approach in terms of optimal patient care for recovery and prehab care because of the team-based approach. So we're very pleased about the expansion of the Canada Student Loan Forgiveness Program. This month, it's also National Physiotherapy Month, and we're focused on scope of practice and optimizing that skill set across Canada. And we've been meeting with MPs from all over to talk about why physios, for instance, should be able to order an X-ray or diagnostics or provide, with the right training, pelvic care. So this, for us, ensures that Canadians have high-quality care utilizing a team-based approach.
Thank you, and thank you, MP Thompson, and congratulations on Physiotherapy Month. So now we will go to MP Samari for a couple of minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully agree with your last comment. For Mr. Vronsis, I fully agree with you. The government must urgently regulate the open banking sector. As you said, you have been asking for it since 2016. The government responded in 2018 with its intention to move forward. Since this time, it has been pushed back again and again. And in the earlier panel, there was the FCAC, which told us that the government told it the night before the budget was tabled that it would be the organization responsible for the framework. Do you think that it seems like improvisation at this point?
I don't want to speculate about how organized or disorganized it might be behind the scenes because I don't have a special insight into how the different political offices work. I know that we as an association have been talking to the government for some time, for example, about whether the FCAC would be a good body. For the record, the FCAC is a body that we as FinTechs Canada endorsed and advised the government to pick in January. So I do think thought and consideration was given as to which Canadian regulator would be best, and we at FinTechs Canada are happy with the choice.
Oh, je trouve ça vraiment discutable.
Well, I think that that's debatable because they said that they don't have the expertise. They need to get to look at this. This is an association that was in education on consumer best practices, but we may disagree on that. All of the financial institutions under provincial jurisdiction, like co-ops and credit unions, with the framework as presented, will have to ask the province to be removed from the Provincial Consumer Protection Act to move under federal jurisdiction. And there's no word on cooperation with the various jurisdictions. Do you think that's responsible? Thank you.
So I don't know what exactly the state of the conversation is between, say the Department of Finance and the provincial regulators, but what I do know is that this framework is being designed in such a way to respect the authority of the provinces. There are many ways that is being done. For example, it's an opt-in framework. We have provincially regulated entities in our membership and in our conversations with them. They don't think this will create any problems. So provincially regulated entities can always decide not to participate if they don't want to. But for many provincially regulated entities, the requirements they meet under provincial oversight are already quite high. And I don't think will be superseded or made more onerous by Canada's open banking framework I think there could be an opportunity to recognize some equivalency so that certain provincially regulated institutions don't need to jump through a bunch of new hoops because they've effectively already jumped through them.
Ouais, le cadre tel que présenté ne le permet pas.
The framework as presented does not allow that. Thank you, Mr. Sainte-Marie.
Final questioner, we've got MP Davies for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Srinivasan, I just would like to pick up where we left off, and I would invite you to complete your thoughts.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. I just wanted to add further to what Jenny Jeans was saying, because your question was about, are the facilities going to be available in federal correctional institutions to support mental health supports? And the truth is there are no guarantees of that. Our questions to the Immigration Refugee Department was very much to say, where have you been scoping where such potential zones could be created in federal corrections? We haven't done the map yet. We don't know. Have you determined to what extent mental health services will be available? We would have to figure that out. So it's a high-risk scenario where it's unclear where in the country they would be creating such immigration detentions. But we can imagine, since they're identifying it for a small number, and the level of criteria that they feel they have to meet are high, that they could be very physically dispersed. And so this could mean the people that are placed in federal prisons for immigration detention could end up being far from communities, far from the services, far from their care providers. And so to us, the risk of the access to mental health services is very high. And the other point that I wanted to identify when you spoke to the question of why are they doing it now? What is the timing? I guess for us, the main point here is that it is in fact outrageous that they are doing it. We have 10 provinces across the political spectrum, conservative provincial governments, liberal provincial governments, and also here in Quebec, in Quebec, I work usually in Montreal, saying this is absolutely not on anymore. There has been a groundswell of public outcry. So we have public direction and political direction in the country moving very specifically against putting people in administrative detention in prison. And the federal government is choosing now is the time they're going to put it. We know federal prisons are much more, these are the places where people who have convictions of higher than 2 years. So it's much more serious to be placed in a federal prison. And in terms of Canada's reputation, we just had the UN detention experts visiting Canada. They were appalled that this was happening. And so it is just a radical departure. The why are they doing it now is really more a question of it makes no sense that they do it. The provincial contracts are ending in a matter of days. So we know, even BIA aside, we won't have the ability. So there's obviously already a plan in place for how to manage the less than 30 people who are left in provincial jails. There is capacity in immigration holding centers. There is no reason to radically shift Canada's paradigm, which is clearly across the spectrum and across the country opposed to putting people in administrative detention in federal prisons. And so it just must be summarily rejected, especially in the context of slipping it into a Budget Implementation Act.
Thank you, MP Davies.
Thank you.
And we want to thank our excellent witnesses. Thank you for coming before Finance Committee on C69, and we appreciate your testimony. I wish you the best with the rest of your day. Okay, thank you, members. We are now suspended as we transition to our next panel. Final panel for today. This is our fourth panel today, but our eighth panel altogether of witnesses that we've had. And we've got with us today the BGC East Scarborough, Ucha Sawyers, who's the Chief Executive Officer. Welcome. From the Financial Data Technology Association of North America, its Executive Director, Stephen Booms, is with us. And from the Public Service Alliance of Canada, we have the Director of Negotiations and Programs Branch, Liam McCarthy, is with us, as well as President of Customs and Immigration, Mark Weber. Welcome. And Miss Michelle Garash, and I apologize, I don't have your title, Ms. Garash, but if you're welcome to let the members know what title you do have with the PSAC. And on that, we are going to hear first from the PGC East Scarborough for up to 5 minutes, please.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for providing us with this opportunity to share a bit of what's happening for us and the potential, as the example of the potential of how investing in a club like ours or organization like ours can, replicate across the country. For us, this is a very historic moment. For BGC Scarborough, I share a bit about who we are and what we do. BGC Scarborough is a children and youth organization that focuses on supporting children and youth with their development needs from cradle to career. One of the key programs and essential embeds in our fabric is our food programs. We provide student nutrition programs from morning and breakfast programs to catering all of our daytime meal programs for licensed childcare, early on services. Our youth programs, in fact, we are mandated to have food as a part of every program that we offer to the broader community, and we're serving over 6,500 children and youth monthly. We also service the community in terms of community food programs that go out to those who are vulnerable and isolated and in need. So for us, food definitely is a central point of how we show up to the table in terms of servicing community. And with the this historic moment in Canada with this investment, we'll join other G7 countries in terms of industrial countries around the world in establishing a national food program. We've been a part of the Coalition for Student Nutrition, Healthy School Food, actually the Coalition for Healthy School Food for many years now. And as a collaborative, we've been working, diligently on sharing our data and just the impacts of these supports with the broader collective that is represented, that has representation across Canada. This investment is an excellent social and economic policy that will support children and youth in schools across the country to be well nourished, ready to learn, and to have equal opportunity to succeed. It'll also help families by reducing grocery bills and will support women and parents, farmers and food systems, jobs and economic growth and communities across the country. As stated by, we sent in, data from the World Food Program meeting earlier this year in Paris that said, that all evidence shows that school meal programs, along with other social protection initiatives, are one of the smartest long-term investments any government can make. And we see that in terms of the long term. We follow children from, as I said, cradle all the way to career often. And we see firsthand just the impacts of being able not to just provide food, but also provide, nutrient dense, access to quality food, and also food literacy as part of the ongoing journey. In Ontario today, a major announcement was made about financial literacy in schools. We strongly believe that through student nutrition programming, that food literacy through schools will also help us to curb a lot of the social determinant impacts or negative impacts in the long-term lives of children and youth across the country. And we see it firsthand in East Scarborough. BGC Scarborough looks forward to working in collaboration with all levels of government. We currently are provincially funded. We received just under 10,000 to serve, that large quantity of children and youth each year. And that works out to about 25 cents. So 25 cents per snack, $1, and 10 cents per meal. So you can see how, for us as a nonprofit charitable organization, this layered on investment will really help us shore up and have a sustainable way of providing these programs. Right now, we are dependent on gleaning from other revenue sources, and with the economy and just all of what we're facing in terms of, global economic impacts coming out of COVID and now getting out of, or transitioning through, a more, um, a time of austerities, we are so excited and very much in support of having this the student nutrition collaboration across the country to layer on supports for clubs like ours, schools, um, community spaces that are providing alternative meal programs. And as a part of the coalition, we definitely look forward to, being consulted and supporting as this particular investment is being rolled out across the country.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Sawyers, and I'm sure the members will have many questions for you. Now we're going to Financial Data and Technology Association of North America and Mr. Stephen Bohms. And Mr. Bohms, I do understand that there may be some challenges with your headset or with the sound, but we're going to do the best that we can.
Thank you very much, and hopefully you can hear me clearly. I appreciate the opportunity to appear today on behalf of the Financial Data and Technology Association of North America, or FDATA. We are the leading trade association advocating for consumer permissioned access to financial data in both Canada and the US. Our members today collectively provide millions of Canadian consumers and SMEs with access to vital financial services, products, and tools. We enable Canadian consumers, for example, to access more competitive banking services.
I'm going to have to interrupt. The sound quality is insufficient for our interpreters to be able to do their job. So we are not going to be able to hear your remarks unless that can be fixed. So I'm not sure if our technicians can work with Mr. Bohms. Sure, and so we will move now to the Public Service Alliance of Canada. And I believe it's your president, President Weber. You'll be delivering remarks? Yes, okay. So for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address the Finance Committee today. My name is Mark Weber. I appear before you today as a member of the National Board of Directors of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, which represents 245,000 members, most of whom are federal public service employees. Many also work in post-secondary institutions, territorial governments, nonprofits, Indigenous organizations, and even some private employers. I am also the national president of the Customs and Immigration Union, a component of the PSAC, which represents over 12,000 employees of the Canada Border Services Agency, which includes 9,000 members of the Border Services Group who have now been without a contract for 2 years. On the positive side, Budget 2024 provided significant funding for post-secondary students, workers, and institutions, especially in remote locations. This is good news for our members in that sector, and we do congratulate the government on these announcements. We suggest that the list of eligible professions include occupational therapists, and if not already included in the definition of nurse, please include registered practical nurses, RPNs, licensed practical nurses, LPNs, and registered nurses. Ideally, distribution of these funds would happen no later than 30 days after the Act receives royal assent. Bill C-69 also provides language that clarifies in the Canada Labour Code that employers are responsible for properly identifying employees as such, instead of skirting responsibilities by claiming that they are contractors. This is also a welcome and long overdue change for Canadian workers. We are also pleased to see language around an employee's right to disconnect during non-work hours. Unfortunately, this section makes some of the same mistakes that the Ontario government has made in their changes to the Ontario Employment Standards Act, and should include minimum standards that apply to all workers and employers, along with meaningful penalties for breaches of these standards. While the elements mentioned above are certainly positive, we are concerned that the budget and the bill leave out some important aspects. There is no money for Phoenix damages or increased funding to hire and retain more staff to deal with the nearly 500,000 Phoenix cases still in the backlog currently. There is no money to increase capacity at the Pay Equity Commission, which is sorely behind. Even more concerning are two issues that are included in C69. Firstly, changes are made to the Public Service Pension Investment Board Act. We understand from different sources that these are housekeeping changes made so that the Treasury Board can move money to and from members' plans in the case of a non-permitted surplus, or possibly in the case of increased draws from the plan or reduced revenues. The federal government would do well to remember that any surplus that may be realized will have been built on employee contributions. Before any move is made to use that surplus for government spending, it is essential that members be consulted and that inequities be rectified. One such inequity is the differential treatment for public safety occupations. The PSAC has long called on the federal government to provide border officers, federal defense firefighters, and fisheries officers with pension provisions equivalent to their peers in public safety divisions of other departments and governments. Right now, CBSA officers, federal firefighters, and fisheries officers must work at least 5 years longer than their peers, leaving them at increased risk for occupational diseases and injuries, and making recruitment and retention increasingly difficult as well. The fact that the federal government continues to refuse to implement the simple legislative changes that would correct this inequity is deeply insulting to our members. Budget 2024 is a chance for the government to change this. We also have questions around proposed changes to the Corrections Act in order to permit the housing of immigration detainees in federal correctional facilities. As bargaining agent for CBSA, correctional services, and immigration workers, PSAC must be consulted on any changes to these job classifications, locations of work, and responsibilities. Who will provide what service to detainees under this new framework? How will jobs interact and overlap? And will the government confirm that services will not be contracted out? Public safety duties should never be offloaded to the lowest bidder, and private security companies have no role to play in these or any public institutions if we wish to ensure the integrity of sensitive public safety processes. I thank the committee and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Weber, for those opening remarks. And now I'm sure the members have many questions. We are going to move into our first round, which is 6 minutes of questioning by each party. We're starting with MP Lawrence for the first 6 minutes.
Yeah, and I understand that Mr. Baums isn't able to participate. I was just wondering if I could just ask him a couple of questions and maybe he could respond in writing to the committee if that would be acceptable to the chair. Okay. So I apologize, Mr. Baums, for your inability to participate. But if you could write to the committee with respect to the following two questions. Are your members satisfied with the progress with respect to real-time rail and open banking? And just you could expand upon that would help us in our deliberations. And so that's it, Mr. Baums. If you could write to the committee, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, sir. I'll be splitting some of my time with Mr. Morantz, but just a couple of questions for you, Mr. Weber. In the budget of 2024, the government proposed to reduce the size of the public service by 5,000 full-time equivalents, and reducing it from 368,000 down by 5,000. And I just want to get your comment on that, if I could.
Concerning. Oh, the mic's not on. There we go. It is concerning. We're not sure exactly where these cuts are going to come from. I could say right now, the component that I'm a president of, the CBS, the Customs Immigration Union at the CBSA, we're short between 2,000 and 3,000 officers just to keep our borders running. To give you an idea of how bad the shortfall in staff is. I don't think our situation is unique either. To think of where those cuts are going to come from is extremely concerning.
Thank you. And in the context of the government's plans to reduce the public service, they're still spending, depending on the number you use, anywhere from $15 to $20 billion on consultants. Do you believe that your members would be capable of fulfilling some, if not all, of that work of the consultants?
Absolutely, we do. There's no need for that kind of money to be spent on consultants. As with our employer, with the CBSA, we saw what happened with ArriveCan and everything surrounding that. That was a monumental waste of money that was absolutely unneeded. Our members could have done that work.
You kind of stole my thunder there. So I was going to ask about ArriveCan, but perhaps I'll just allow you to sort of repeat, I think, some of the things that your team has put on the record with respect to your ability to accomplish not just ArriveCan, that's to get headlines and clips and stuff like that, but I'm more interested because there's going to be a lot of digitalization. There's going to be a lot of IT work that's going to be needed to be done, irrespective of any government for the next 10 years. I just want to hear from you about the confidence you have in your members to get that work done.
Yeah, complete confidence in our members to get it done. When ArriveCan happened, none of the members or none of the people who actually work at the border were consulted on what was needed for an application to work at the border. That's not uncommon at the CBSA. We are generally not consulted on anything. The people who run the CBSA are almost universally not people who've ever worked at a border as well. So it was, I mean, ill-advised money that didn't need to be spent, work that members could have done. It's outsourcing that's unneeded, and I don't think, again, the situation is different with any of the components of the PSAC.
Thank you for your excellent testimony. I'll pass the floor now to my colleague, Mr. Moraines.
Thank you. You touched on, Mr. Weber, in your opening comments, the disaster around the Phoenix pay system. Do you have a sense of what the global damages are to the public service because of the debacle of the Phoenix pay system, and in a dollar amount, well, how much does the federal government actually owe in outstanding pay to public servants?
Well, I do know that there's about 400,000 cases that are still unresolved. That work is still ongoing with very few resources to see those cases be resolved. Dollar figures I don't have exactly. I could tell you the mental health toll, the anxiety, the years that members have been suffering just to try to get paid for the work that they do is absolutely extreme. Michelle, perhaps you would have more on that?
No, I don't have the numbers, but we can get back to the committee in writing if you would wish.
I would really appreciate if you could provide a number. And just if you could tell, is it still going on?
Phoenix
Are people still not getting paid appropriately?
Yeah. They're 8 years in. There has yet to be a pay period that has not had mistakes. As Mr. Weber said, there are over 400,000 cases yet to be resolved, and it keeps happening. It continues. So.
Thank you. How much time do we have left, Mr. Chair?
We've got 1 minute.
1 minute. In that time, I think I'll just turn to Ms. Sawyer for a second. Ms. Sawyer, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Just, I was wondering if you could just describe some of the programs that your organization, the valuable programming that your organization provides to children and youth.
Definitely. So we, as I mentioned before, we provide programs from cradle to career. So that's infant care all the way up to youth outreach, youth academic bridging, youth employment programs. We operate two main sites, or a main site and a hub site. We provide services in 26 other satellite sites, and they range from, as I mentioned, licensed childcare, early years learning. We also have early children and teen or early teen recreational programs. We run Circle of Friends, which is the autism recreation program for two groups of children, those who are, early stage or early years. And then we've now developed a tween program for children who identify on the spectrum and are in need of interaction and recreation support. We also run criminal justice support for youth who are navigating the criminal justice system. One of the things that we're newly embarking on is affordable housing for young Black youth in our community who are the common denominator in terms of being underserved and underrepresented in the housing landscape in East Scarborough. So that's,
Thank you so much, Ms. Sawyer. And I apologize for the interruption. The chair is telling me I've run out of time, but that was very interesting.
Well, I was just enlightened and delighted to hear about all the programs that Ms. Sawyer delivers. Oh my goodness, I don't know when you guys have time to sleep. I'll let you do. But we are now moving to P.S. Turnbull for the next 6 minutes, and members just want you to know that Mr. Bohms, I think now his new computer or whatever may be working with the sound, so we may be able to go to him for questions. P.S. Turnbull.
Ms. Sawyers, great to have you here. Great to have all the witnesses here, but I'll direct most of my questions towards you. I was very happy to be with you in East Scarborough when the Prime Minister made the announcement of the National School Food Program. I know how much work you've done as one of the Coalition for Healthy School Food members. Could you speak a little bit about your advocacy and the members of that coalition's advocacy and how long it's been going on for, and just how much effort that group, those members, I think there's about 300 members, if I'm not mistaken, across Canada, that have been advocating for a national school food program for quite some time. Could you give us a bit of detail on that?
Most definitely. The coalition has been around, I believe, going back over 25 years in some way or form, looking at food systems, specifically as they relate to school food programs. The model and the operation or the movement is, like you said, 300 members, and it's nationwide. And we work in synergy with each other to share models and different strategies for us to make sure and ensure that we are able to at least impact to some degree on the local level our student nutrition programs in our various community spaces. So that would be schools, that would be community centers, that would be, clubhouses like ours, and other spaces and programs and national movements that are focused on healthy foods, healthy access for children and youth to nutrient-dense food. And that's working with a broad spectrum. So anyone from, those who are leading food programs in schools as volunteers to those of us who are in, nonprofit executive roles, those of us who are in academic institution doing research, and galvanizing all of that content and research and that information together to create synergies and strategies that work at the local level. Because one of the things that we've definitely been able to lead through the coalition is the reality that there's not a cookie cutter solution in every community, and it's each community has the right to self-determine what their food system looks like in terms of access for children and youth. And, we've pioneered, programs that are culturally appropriate, that consider cultural custom, that, and spread, that content across Canada. And I think a coalition like this helps us to quickly move, the most current and most successful models of student nutrition programs across Canada in a strategic and harmonious way.
Thank you for that. And I would note that one of the most prominent, I think, voices in Canada, Food Secure Canada, is the organization that houses the Coalition for Healthy School Food. Food security comes up quite often in our conversations in Parliament these days. In fact, Conservative politicians are regularly citing food bank lineups and the increased number, and I think we can all agree that seeing more Canadians turning to food banks is a troubling sign. But let me just ask you, as someone who does this work on the ground in community through an organization that I know does great work, is this program addressing food insecurity at the household level, from your perspective?
Well, we've learned firsthand that whatever the children and youth, whatever they impact in terms of access, so that we're focusing in this regard on food access, permeates the home, right? Like when we shifted away from just serving any food to being very intentional with our food charter and focusing on nutrient dense food and understanding food literacy, we saw that the parents were coming back and being impacted and wanting to learn more about what we were offering and how they can offer that at home. So in that regard, yes, it does impact, have that significant impact. We still have a ways to go with looking at the economic impact and how we could shift that. But again, the investment it can grow, any investment to layer on it to what we're doing now is definitely a step in the right direction.
Great. And just to be clear, there's some politicians that have said really absurd things like there's no food in school food programs. I've heard them say that. You're actually feeding children, right? Like real food?
So we are. Yep, definitely we are. We have a chef culinary team on site that actually goes through a holistic food guide, looking at how we can make sure that the food is not just, filling the hunger spaces, but it's also uplifting and nourishing that child for an optimal future. So we, when the premier was at our site, he was there cutting up fresh vegetables and fruits and all of these great, snacks that, again, have an impact that we know that when a child is well fed, they're ready to learn, they're ready to, be a part of, civic society. And, it's important for us to make sure, we are providing, healthy food, not just, ordering, something or taking whatever's donated and so on and so forth. We're making sure that we even set a standard with how we glean food, from community to make sure that children are eating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, P.S. Turnbull. And now we'll go to MP Samari, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Weber. But please allow me to say to Madame Sawyers, you're doing excellent work. It's very important. With few resources. So hats off to you and to your team. It's so important what you're doing. My question is for Mr. Weber. Thank you for joining us and for giving your speech. You raised a number of issues. First of all, how would you describe the relationship between the government and the alliance? Namely, when the government makes decisions affecting your members, does it consult the PSAC sufficiently?
Very little consultation that does take place. Consultation, I know for many employers and at the CBSA specifically, is quite often telling us what they're going to do the day before. Major decisions like ArriveCan, no consultation, no participation whatsoever. So very concerning. I mean, if you want to run an operation properly, you ask the people who actually work it, in my opinion.
C'est mon opinion aussi. C'est assez.
That's also my opinion. It's quite surprising that it wasn't done. You already responded to the question somewhat, but if you could continue to explain and illustrate with other examples, how does the government's efficiency increase when it consults the PSAC more?
I could tell you right now, not having been with the contract for 2 years and being at the negotiating table, sitting across from our employer, the answer to absolutely everything has been simply no. It's been so abysmal, we've not even been given a wage offer to give you an idea of the level of disrespect. So here we are with mediation coming up on Monday on the verge of a strike, and our employer has refused to really talk to us about anything whatsoever. Our members work incredibly difficult jobs. They are horribly understaffed. 3,000 is a fairly conservative estimate of how many more we need. We have ports of entry that 5 years ago had 20 people working at them that are down to 5 or 6. They work almost unlimited overtime. We make up 3% of the federal public service at the CBSA. We account for 20% of the overtime budget. To give you an idea of the hours that they are working to keep our borders running, they do it with pride. They do not want to go on strike. We just want to be negotiating with someone who actually speaks to us, understands the issues, and our issues and our demands at the bargaining table are parity with the rest of law enforcement, being able to retire after 25 years like all the rest of law enforcement. The CBSA wonders why they have such staffing issues in terms of recruitment and retention. The tagline seems to be, come to the CBSA, we will pay you less and you have to work longer. That's not a great way to keep or attract people.
Oui, c'est vraiment navrant.
Yes, it's really striking. You just repeated 2 years without a work contract. What explains the government's decision to let things drag on, and what message does it send about the federal government's respect for the rights of workers?
Absolutely inexplicable, in that it really shows a severe lack of respect for the people who do the work. Our strike mandate was 96% in favor with a 70% participation rate. That's about as high and as strong as anyone has ever seen. Our members are so disappointed. If you had a situation where everyone in this room had a benefit except one person, and that one person asked for it year after year for decades and was refused even proper consultation or discussion over it, I think we would all agree that that person would be understandably furious, and that is the situation we are in, specifically with the 25 and out. Salary is an issue too, though. We're the second largest law enforcement force in Canada. We enforce more legislation than any other police agency. We're armed, same use of force requirements, yet, we're always told that in terms of pay and benefits, we are somewhat less. It's an unacceptable situation. It has to change.
Oui, tout à fait.
Yes, thank you. We understand the lack of respect about the public sector and for the work sector that you represent, and that's upsetting. What is the impact of letting things drag on like this and to not respect the public service? And how does that affect the broader Canadian population?
I think the public can see it. We garnered tremendous support back when we went on strike in 2021. I think everything that's come out, we discussed how ArriveCan became a public issue and other things we see happening at the Federal Public Service, Phoenix, Canada Life. It's one thing after the next where the consultation is poor to none. The decision to arbitrarily send people back to work 3 days a week when we had a telework agreement that ensured individual consultation and committees that would look into these things. It's one thing after the next that demonstrates that lack of respect, and I think the Canadian public can really see it. And now, for us specifically at the CBSA, we might be on strike in a week. Obviously, that could greatly affect the public when they cross the border. It's the last thing we want. It was absolutely 100% unavoidable. Again, our bargaining demands are not pie in the sky. It's just about getting what everyone else has. It's really, really disappointing to see us be in this situation now.
Merci, and merci, MP Saint-Marie.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
We'll welcome and go to MP Green to our committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's certainly a pleasure to be back, and it's great to be here, particularly on a day where we have the opportunity to talk a little bit about our public service, our incredible public service. I want to begin, Mr. Weber, by congratulating PSAC on a successful convention, new president, new executive, and yet the fight continues. And so I want to pick up on your last round of questioning as it related to, in early May, PSAC sent a joint letter with 15 federal public service unions to the president of the Treasury Board, Anita Anand, to express your outrage with the federal government's decision to impose an in-office mandate. The updated policy requires all federal public service workers in the core public administration and in separate agencies to work on site a minimum 3 days a week. Can you confirm if PSAC was consulted by the federal government prior to the announcement of this in-office mandate?
I can confirm that we were absolutely not consulted before this came out. We were actually told that it was not going to happen.
And you'd mentioned, I think I heard you say that this was part of a telework agreement. So this was, in fact, indeed, part of your collective agreement?
Correct. There was a letter of understanding that there would be there would be consultation, there would be joint consultation committees, and the telework agreements would be done on a case-by-case basis per employee, which is really the opposite of what happened. It was an arbitrary mandate for everyone to go back 3 days a week.
Yeah. And in your view, does this imposition of the mandate violate the spirit and intent of the signed letters of agreement between the federal government and PSAC from your recent rounds of collective bargaining?
I believe it absolutely does, and the situation we're in at CIU with potentially being on strike in a week is as mediation happens next week and negotiations go on, we're going to be demanding that things be enshrined in our collective agreement because apparently a letter of understanding doesn't have much value.
In your view, how will the imposition of this mandate impact the workforce productivity and well-being and work-life balance of your members?
It's been devastating for work-life balance. It's done nothing for productivity. Actually, the Government of Canada during COVID was very proud to announce